It's preparing.
Okay, so I have to say got it. Okay, so I clicked my part.
Hello, it is Nancy Juetten, and today is Monday, October 18th. And what a fantastic Learn More to Earn More show we have in store for you today. Today, we are talking about sound bites, how to do them well, what not to do, why they're important, how they can help elevate your brand and reputation. We're going to get into some how-to, and we may even get into some unexpected things that are probably just hanging out below the surface that you wish we would ask, that we're anticipating, so that this next few minutes is going to be the best moments you can spend as you consider how you are going to amplify your authority, your credibility, your wow factor, and to make your interviews memorable. Who is my guest today? Oh, I'm so excited. It is none other than media coach Susan Harrow, who I've known for like over 10 years. So let me tell you about Susan Harrow. Susan Harrow is a world-renowned media coach, marketing strategist, martial artist, and author of the best-selling book by HarperCollins, Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul. For the last 32 years, she's run Harrow Communications, a media consultancy where she's media trained thousands of CEOs, speakers, entrepreneurs, and authors through courses, her one-on-one consulting, to multiply their revenue with media interviews by using messaging effectively without selling their soul. Her course, the Zen of Fame, Your Genius Zone, shows people how to promote themselves.
Your genius gone viral.
Oh, your genius gone viral. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Shows people how to promote themselves with integrity and spirit, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that.
I kind of like it is in your genius zone. But just, a quick thing, just because we did that. If anybody says anything incorrect, Nancy and I have known each other forever, just correct them with a neutral tone on the spot.
Oh, very
whether
good.
It's your name or whether it's because somebody just introduced me the other day. I was doing a master class as a marital artist. And I started laughing. I go, I have been with my sweetie for almost 20 years. I know you've been with Steve for a really long time. I go, but I am not a marital expert at all. I'm a martial artist. Yeah, so I had to correct her on that if it's like super minor or whatever. But I'm like, no, I can't be out there as a marital expert. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes, indeed. Well, thank you very much. Way to pack in a lesson before we even get started. People, like my last name is Juetten like button. And sometimes people will say Juetten, or they'll say something and it's like, oh, hey, I can't go through a whole interview with them calling me that. So I say, no, it's Juetten like button.
Yeah. And I'm sure you put that like in brackets and before every interview so they can say Juetten like button, or they can say it right? Like
I do.
Preemptively. Yeah.
I do, because sometimes there are people that we both worked with over the years that have had very unusual names that you can very likely mess up. And so giving someone a phonetic spelling, how do I actually say that? Juetten like button. That's, most people know what a button is. Juetten rhymes with button. Now you'll never forget.
I love it.
Which I suppose is like a soundbite. It's Juetten like button.
It is. That's a very good soundbite.
So before we get into the nitty gritty, I wanted to tell the story about how we met, because one of the things that I'm often sharing with my clients is that there's opportunity waiting for you if you could just be ready for it and just have the courage to ask for what it is that you want. Do you remember what happened way back when you were doing your...
I tell that story all the time too, because it's such a great story. And if people are intimidated by quote unquote sound bites, really they're just your key messages, but they're stories, statistics, facts, they're a mix of things that you move into the conversation. And one of the most potent ones are stories, because that's what people remember. That's what gets the emotion. So yeah, I'd love to hear how you tell it, because we might have slightly different versions, but yeah, I love this story. And those are the things too, just an FYI, like if the story, even though this is a story I think it's over 10 years old. It may be 15, because I think you invited me to your play. Well, I'll share that after, but I think it's like 15 years. So if the story is like timeless and it represents something, you can use it over and over again. Just, make it fresh, right? And Nancy will tell you how. So yeah, I want to hear your version of the story.
Well, so way back when I barely had like 1,100 names on my opt-in subscriber list and was just a tiny little minnow in the sea of online marketing, I was following you and your work because I thought, here's a woman who's been a publicist in her former life, who has now made a completely different way to serve in a much bigger way. And I want to be like her when I grow up. Who hasn't felt that way? So I was reading your newsletters with rapt attention, and I saw one, and it said, I'm going to be doing this major publicity giveaway where I've tapped all the biggest names in publicity to give away their very best work for a very affordable price during this very specific window. And it's going to be your ticket to learn everything there is to know about publicity. And I can't wait to have you participate. It said something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I would so love to have the opportunity to be included in something like that. I think it could put me on the map. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I think I might have reached out to you and said, I see that you have this big event coming up, and I have a lot of people in my world who want to learn that. I wonder if I might support you as a joint venture partner. And you didn't even know who I was.
Yeah.
But you said, well, sure, that'd be fine. I'll send you the copy. And so she sent me the promotional copy, Susan did, and I got it all queued up and ready to go to my 1,065 subscribers. And then I think I found some courage and I said, there could be the chance that some big wig that's participating in this is going to drop off at the 11th hour. And if you need somebody to stand in the breach, just count on me. I'd love the opportunity to have that moment. And you were so gracious. You said, well, I'm not familiar with your work, but why don't you send some things my way and I'll take a look at it, which felt to me like the door was like opening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I wrote a handwritten note and I sent my Bye Bye Boring Bio workbook to your front porch and said something nice. And you wrote to me not long after, and I think you said something like this: I don't care if a big fish falls off the edge of the earth. I love your approach. I love your style. Your material is excellent. I would be happy to have you included as a contributor.
Yes. Yes. And
then I just felt like, oh my God, my heart was beating out of my chest because everything changed for me after that.
Wow. And I'd love to hear what changed, but I just want to say one of the reasons why I considered you was your approach. It was really respectful. You offered to show me your work. I didn't need to go looking for it. And you did say, you admitted that you had a small list, which a lot of people don't. You're like, I have this list, but you know what? These people are really loyal and I will work so hard for you and I will do right by you. And I believed you, and I believed in you. And so, yes, I included you. And I don't know if you don't remember this part, but I had within the mega sale, I had buttons to click on for people to, and it wasn't free, by the way. It was not a free thing. We didn't do free things. That was paid. So people had to actually buy. So I had like four buttons like on the page to see where people would buy. And you came in. The people on your list, statistically wise, your response was bigger than any of the biggest marketers, and that they clicked on the first link. Like, I trust you because Nancy Juetten is here. So their trust in you translated to the trust in me. They bought on the first link, and you were, I think, number 2 in that sales. There was a big marketer ahead of you, but percentage wise, you were at the top of people that opted in and bought in terms of the percentage. And I was like, whoa, that's loyalty counts way more to me than volume, right? That people are devoted to her. And those are the kind of people that I want in my realm, other people who are devoted to you. And then extend out like what happened after. I mean, is I don't know what happened with you, what I want to hear, but years later, Nancy invited me to stay at her house, go to Seattle and speak, and you booked me like solidly for the weekend. She booked like 5 speaking engagements. I was so tired. I needed to be sleeping in that bed of your, I was so tired. And I just want to say that just a month ago, somebody who has seen me speak, it was 8 years ago, because they're like, I saw you speak 8 years ago in Seattle. I'm thinking, wow, I go, they just connected with me and it was actually the husband of someone, but she is now a client of mine from 8 years ago with something really that I'm really excited about promoting. So you don't know in PR where you're going to land in the world, who you're going to connect with, when it's going to happen. I know people want it to happen like right now, and it can. There's things that can happen here, but there are also things that happen in stages years later. Like he remembered my talk 8 years later. Like, huh? Right?
Well,
He said you were memorable. I'm thinking, what did I do? I don't even remember what I talked about, right? Like, what did I do?
well,
But
I remember, well, we'll get into the meat of this, but I do remember a lot of what you said. But one of the coolest things that you did at the end is you had a handful of chocolate kisses and you threw them into the air and everybody was reaching for them. And it was just such a wonderful way to seal the presentation with something delicious that we would forever remember. And that is another kind of, it's not really a sound bite, but it was an experiential bite that we all
part of the
had.
brand. It's a part of my brand. I'm just about to go to Cancun on Thursday to deliver a workshop, and I have those chocolate kisses. They're golden kisses. I give them out as like, here are your golden publicity kisses. It's one of my trademarks. So I've been doing this for maybe 20, 30, 25 years, a long time, but I just conceived of it and I just wanted to be able to give somebody, I wanted to bless them at the end with these, that publicity is possible for you. Go out into the world, shine your light, give what you have to give, and people will respond to you. And that's really the essence of it.
Well, it was very, very memorable. And for me, what happened way back then, I was just getting started. And I remember, a lot of people have list shame and they want to be somebody someday. And you had revealed that you had thousands of people on your email list at that time. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder when that's going to happen for me. It's only going to happen for me if I give first before I get, if I really deliver on my promises, if I put good energy out on behalf of people I truly admire. At some point, it's going to come back to me. And that really has been what has happened for me. When you land on a leaderboard in a joint venture, and you don't think it's a big deal, like in the moment. But what I discovered is that when your name shows up on a leaderboard, amidst all the other usual suspects that play, you're like the new kid in town. And if you finish in the top 2 or the top 5 or something, people go, holy mackerel, there's someone with some influence. I better make friends with her because I'd love to have that level of advocacy bestowed upon what it is that I do. And so it did really kind of put me on the elevator as far as
I'm so glad.
welcoming invitations and such.
That's wonderful. I love that.
So that's how we met.
That's how publicity works too. I mean, it is, an opening person, warm hand to warm hand, and it can happen like that on so many different levels. And that's why I think, again, people are looking sometimes for like the big volume, or, they're looking for the Today Show or the View or whatever, but it can really happen on your local penny saver that just moves forward. And I know we want to talk about messaging and things like that. So I think that's really important. But I want to tell you that like the big producers and everything are always looking at the tiny publications because they're looking for something unusual. And that's what happened with a gal who was in one of my learning analyst classes way a long time ago, the pet detective, who had a tiny little article in like I want to call it the Moonshiner, but it was like the Penny Saver, whatever, the little local article. And then the Chronicle, the San Francisco Chronicle got a hold of it. And then People Magazine noticed it. And then she was on Animal Planet. See, it just went on from there. But it was like that local free thing that, you open up the bin. I don't know if we have some of them anymore, but that's where it started. So wherever you are, start with a podcast. Like Nancy's the expert in that. Any kind of podcast, and get your chops down. And when I was a publicist, Nancy, what I would do when I booked my clients, because they weren't always experienced, some of them were new authors or whatever, I didn't book them on the biggest, we didn't have podcasts then yet, radio show or whatever. I booked them and got my chops down on the smallest stations first, because I wanted my clients to get the practice and the use. And I wanted to practice my pitch to see what worked, because I was like, well, if it's not working, I need to change it and hone it. And I didn't want that to happen and lose my chance at the big shows, right? So I called all the tiny shows first. I mean, I didn't tell my client this, right? Like, because they didn't need to know that. But I was getting my chops down as they were getting their chops down, because you don't know exactly always what's going to land. You don't know what kind of stories you're going to tell that are going to land. It's a conversation between your audience, and it's an experiment, whether it's a speech or whether it's, and by the way, in this masterclass that I just gave, we did a workshop, and I'm going to be doing another one for people who are interested coming up next week. So if you're on my list, you'll get a note for it. So when I'm back from Cancun, we'll be doing a workshop on how to create your 3 hot hooks workshop. So I created a worksheet, and I did it in a masterclass, and nobody could do it. So what does that tell me? It's like, that was the first time I'd done it. I'm like, oh, well, how would I know that? Like, I thought it was kind of obvious. I thought there were next steps. So what did I do? I had to go back to that worksheet and make it more detailed and think, what is it missing and how can I convey that more to my audience? So the next time around, hopefully, I don't know, it's going to work better. But if you're in that workshop, you will come away with your brilliant phrase, your sloppy first copy of your 3 hot hooks. And hopefully now people will be able to actually do it. But that was a great information for me. And it's the same thing with your messaging. Like, sometimes you think you're saying something that's really landing with people, and it just doesn't. And you have to practice it in lots of different ways until it makes that connection. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I have a follow-up comment, which is also a question, is that finding those 3 hot hooks that are timely and newsworthy and relevant and worth talking about now more than ever, that's like step 1.
Oh, yeah.
When the host or the producer or whoever it is says that's what we want to talk about, the next step is, can you actually deliver when the lights are on, the mic is on, and someone takes you out of left field with a question you weren't expecting?
Yeah.
Because some people are the kind of people that are so tight in their preparedness that you can feel it as soon as you see their face and their body on the air. And some people are ready to roll with it. But if you can't deliver a message on point when you are asked a good question, well, that's a misstep that requires some practice to overcome. And I'm sure you've had people had that happen.
Yeah.
Care to share a story or?
Yes, and I'm so happy you brought that up, because actually that is step 3. And you know this too, because step 1 is preparing your key messages. That's number 1, because you don't reach out to the media until you've got your messaging down, because you don't want to have that, oh, you know what moment when they do call. So even if you've got the best hot hook, if you can't deliver on that, that is going to take you right out of the running ASAP. And you may only have one chance. Certainly broadcast TV, it is an audition. And with the higher level ones, by the way, they usually have a pre-audition. And same with radio, like Terry Gross or Marketplace, all the high level ones. Just like in some podcasts too, there's an assistant or a producer who does a pre-audition before you get accepted to be on the air. So you want to have your key messaging down. And in the new course that Nancy mentioned, Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral, we focus on 3 things. Your messaging, that's key, number 1. Number 2, having your system set up, because PR brings people to your door. You need to open it and usher them through. That's your opt-in, your systems, moving people through the buying process, whatever that is. And then number 3 is creating that campaign, those hot hooks. And it's the whole planning of that campaign. So it's not just sending things out willy-nilly, but really planning where your perfect clients are, and how do you shape the messaging that draws them in and grows your business in the direction you want. So to that point, you want to have your key messages down. And I say 6 sound bites. That's loose. We want to have very fluid stories and points. But, within that, you typically want stories. You want stories that show that you're an expert. This is how you brag without bragging. It's talking about your client's experience that they have with you and the results that they've gotten. And then the second part is like, do you have advice to give that you want to share that knowledge that you have that other people don't. And the third thing, and there's more, but the third main thing is your opinions. Are you shaping a worldview or an opinion of something that is unusual or fresh? That's how you start to elevate to thought leaderdom. Like one of my clients now, who she's going to have an app for hormones, for women and hormones, which is really super brilliant. And one of the things that we're talking about is her shaping the conversation around you being the decision maker in your health. Yes, you get information from your doctor or your naturopath and that, but ultimately you, even if you're using other sources, are the one who's going to make that ultimate decision with your own inner wisdom. And part of that is shaping the conversation about why not giving your power over to a doctor, right? So those are the kinds of conversations we want to start having in how are you framing a question or a perspective that's important, that is your unique perspective, because we know that it's like super competitive in any marketplace really, but not when you start to have your own unique stories and your own unique point of view, and that's really important to cultivate. So those are the things that are really important to do, and part of that is a process. Like when I talk to people, and Nancy, everybody who wants to do a podcast or any kind of media needs to have their signature story down, which is, why do you do what you do? Because that's the number one question anybody's going to ask you. So that's super important to have that down. Why do you do what you do?
So let me ask a question about that.
Yeah. Time out, Susan, stop.
If we are,
so that's a great, it's like, when to stop. Yes, thank you, Nancy.
So I've been helping people write their bios for the last 12 years, and I have been at the receiving end of paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph about somebody's life story, and this is what I call too much information. When we're talking about a podcast or a broadcast, or especially television, national television, when you say, why do you do what you do? I mean, how many seconds do you want people to dial that into so they can deliver it quickly and with impact, versus overstaying their welcome on the air and not delivering the right content?
So in a TV interview, it might be you want to have your bio or your Chiron do part of that work. So your work is super valuable of that. So it's like, what do you want that statement to say that's below your image on the screen that can already explain what you do? And then your story is anywhere from, if you can tell it in 10 seconds, that's fantastic, to about 30 seconds. Sometimes on longer radio stations and on podcasts, you might have 45 seconds, but it probably shouldn't be much longer than that. You're going to have more time if you're on stage in person to elaborate and to develop that and make that connection with your audience. But it's kind of
10 to 45 seconds. Everyone who's listening, 10 to 45 seconds. Can you say why you do what it is that you do in that length of time? That is a very big idea. If I were to ask you, Susan, why do you do what you do? Do you have your answer all ready to go?
Well, of course. I have a number of signature stories, so I'll tell you one of them. So when I was in junior high, I was part of three different groups: the artists, the jocks, and the populars. And one day I saw a kid being beaten up on the school ground, and I ran over and I saw it was one of my artsy friends, and I grabbed the guy off of him and like, get off of him. And I shouted to everybody who was looking like, why are you guys watching this? Get out of here. That moment, I really realized I'm a protector of beauty. I'm a protector of people who don't have a voice. And that's what I do today. So people today who come to me, who want to be able to express themselves in any circumstance, in any way, shape, or form, on media, Zoom call, that sort of thing, I help them stay in their complete integrity, to sell themselves without selling their soul, give themselves their own authentic voice so they can get their offer and their beauty out into the world.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And that's so much cooler and better than leading with where you went to school and how many years you've been doing it, because what you just demonstrated is that it's an idea that's bigger than food, clothing, and shelter. It's an idea that's about allowing people to be fully expressed as the best that they can be. And if that doesn't create a connection with people who are listening, I don't know what else could. That was really nicely done. You said you had another one. Why don't you show us?
Oh, well, yes, another one. So why do I do what I do? One of the other things that I really love is I'm a black belt in Aikido, right? But I am so ungraceful on the Aikido floor. One of the reasons why I wanted to take Aikido is because I wanted the embodiment of, like, yes, we're talking here, we're sitting, but I really wanted things to be completely embodied. And so that's why I trained in Aikido. I was also a former tennis pro, so I have the jock in me, but I did that because what is most important when you are connecting with people is your presence. And I know we chatted like maybe to talk about that. And part of those practices are embodiment practices, things that we do when we're not on screen. And some of them are breathing, meditation. And I just learned of a 3-step process that I use, that I've already used, but I didn't calculate it in this term, but it's Dr. Kim Duramo. Number 1 is awareness. Number 2 is breath. And number 3 is choice. And I think it's so important. So we're aware of, like, we're nervous or feeling whatever. We take the breath, we center, we calm, and we make a choice what's going to come out of our mouth, how we are going to be, how we are going to act. And so to me, that kind of embodiment is really what I'm training people on, because when there's the fear and the fake, all of that is comes up and needs to be dealt with. That's, yes, you can have all of your great sound bites down, but can you get them out when you're actually put on the spot? And this is I kind of went into another story, so that wasn't a whole complete story on its own, but it was kind of another part of it, another part of why I do what I do, and what I've moved into more in a more advanced way with people is developing their everything you do, say, are, and think, from your words to your website, are in complete alignment with who you are. And if I can sum up what I do in one sentence, I can do that, because it's Gandhi's phrase, my life is my message. When
Mm.
your life is your message, then everything starts to come in alignment, and it's not outside of yourself. It's not the universe bringing things to you or the law of attraction. It's you. When you're in alignment, everything also lines up with the kind of the vibrational tone that you give. And so the tone of your vibration and the tone of your voice are super key components, because if we're not seeing you but we're hearing we're still feeling you, right? And we're feeling you through your voice, but there's also the feel of you, the feel of your website, the feel of who you are out into the world. And that's really the most important thing. And you can then mess up your words. I don't even like to say that, but I mean, but it's true. It's like, we'll still follow you. I remember Jerry Seinfeld said, when he would create like the first joke and really work on that, he said, because once you have the audience with you, you can take them anywhere.
Yes. And so here's something I wanted to comment about. Some people who are newer in their journey speaking up on stage in any capacity, as a
Yeah.
guest, as a trainer, as a speaker, as a breakout session leader, I have come across many people who have perfectionist disease. My
Mm.
slides are going to be perfect. My outfit's going to be perfect. My hair's going to be perfect. I'm going to deliver this message in such a way that it is perfect to my way of thinking. And what I've noticed about people who have that bias is that they may be perfect, but there's a big, huge piece that's missing, which is there's no connection with the performance to the people who are paying attention. And that's where the greatest magic really does reside. So, what would you say to people who are victims of perfectionism to the point that they forget to or miss out on the connection piece, which is where all the magic is?
This is so, so important, um, because connection is the most important thing. Yeah. So that comes first. So if your, message is not connecting, it doesn't matter how great it is. You know, it is really establishing um, that, how should I say, how we're alike and how we're different. Just like what you were saying, oh, and I don't know if we can mention the woman that you were talking about who was really beautiful. Do you want to say that
Oh,
part?
I'll mention it.
Yeah, because I think that was
There,
really.
there, I've done pretty well for myself over the last 20 years, but I've been finding myself reaching up to people who are incredibly successful, well beyond what I have achieved so far. And when I find myself sharing the screen with people of that caliber, sometimes I'll wake up that day and look in the bathroom mirror and think to myself, how am I going to hold a candle to that? Whether it's somebody's beauty, someone's intelligence, someone's thought leadership, someone's whatever it is, I immediately go to, I'm less than. And then I have to do this fight within my own body to say, no, they said yes to me. I can be an amazing host, and I intend to be an amazing host, and I'm going to show up as my very best self. But I do have these mental gymnastics that I go through when I'm feeling intimidated, or if I'm being in the company of someone who's in a much cooler club than I've earned my membership card just yet.
And you probably use this phrase because you're so good with these kind of phrases, but compare and despair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, compare and despair. And I think we all have it in the internet age and in the Instagram age, compare and despair. And I think that's about, continually bringing yourself back to center and not thinking about yourself. And in these moments, of course, we are. And I was telling you, I do it too. There's some really super glamorous people in my space, and I'm not. I'm more down home girl. And so, but that's not my superpower, right? Like that, my superpower is not glam, right? And to stay centered and focused on what it is that you have to give, but also to know that we're always comparing our insides to other people's outsides too. Because you had mentioned that this woman, she was like, well, but you have got all this expertise. So she was feeling intimidated by you were feeling intimidated, but by different reasons, right? And I think that there's always going to be that, and it's not about pushing it aside, it's about acknowledging it. And the beauty of that is saying, what part of this do I not have that I could embody, that I could work on? Outer beauty may not be it, unless you're get better at putting on those false eyelashes and whatever, which I debated about today, but I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. But so, to say, if this is something that I really aspire to, let me set myself a program on to do it. But the most important thing about the perfectionism thing is it's not about what are people going to think of me. If you can keep it switched on really seriously, like how can I give the audience what they, and really, it's really two questions. What does my audience need to know now, and how can I help? But it's really you connecting with the audience on what you can give them that is in your own special way, that you can give them that. And if that can remain the focus, then the perfectionism, thanks for making that point, the perfectionism can start to, I'm going to turn off my phone too, the perfectionism can start to drop away a little bit, because it's about I think if you make connection the most important thing, then even sometimes when you have something planned, you can let that go and go with the flow of the moment, even if you think it's like such an important point, to be able to say, actually, what's here now is the most important point, and let me go with that. And to be open to that, and to be relaxed enough to recognize it when it happens. And that one of the people in the program that I was talking about, the Zen of Fame, that's what happened to him. He was a doctor and a Sufi master, and he was struggling with the messaging. And when he was in front of an audience speaking, he had the whole thing planned. And then he really dropped down and felt what the audience needed to hear and started to speak totally from his heart. It's not that it was that far off about what he had planned to say, but it was really a different vibration. And then at the end of that talk, a person walked up to him and handed him a check for $100,000 to support his university and said, I believe in what you do and I want it to keep going. And then another person walked up and handed him a second check for $100,000. Yeah. So when you really connect deeply to your audience, it's not, that's not necessarily about money, right? I'm talking about like continuing his work and his university. Yes, it's great to get $200,000, but these are people who are moved into action because of what he said and because they believed in him. And the same is true for you.
I love that. Now, sometimes when we are on an interview, most hosts are very gracious and simply want to edify the host, the guest that they have on their show, and engage in a quality conversation that they would want to have with any expert and to have the audience made better off. But we've all heard stories of hostile interviewers that wanted to catch somebody by surprise and derail their train of thought and get them down some road that would not be strategically ideal for any party. Do you have any suggestions about how to derail that hostile interview and to stay on point when the moments really matter?
Sure. Yes, lots. So, and yes, that happens all the time. And I have media trained my clients for 60 Minutes, for Bill O'Reilly, and and also Dateline and Geraldo. All of those were like super controversial topics. So I think my one client who was on Geraldo, it was a very important legal case, and actually someone went to jail. So I'm not going to talk about what that was, but it was we vetted all of the sound bites via the attorney, and we wanted to make sure that he stayed completely 100% on message, because these are very, very short interviews. He was doing Fox News and other national news too, but he had to stay very targeted on message for legal implications too. And behind the scenes, at that interview, the producer, cameras are supposedly off, but the cameras are always running, and you were always on. You were always on record, no matter what. So asked him really like about 30 times to try to get him off his message. And so you do want to have different ways of saying your message, but if somebody is super hostile to you, it's really great, first of all, to practice that energy, because that kind of aggressive energy is really scary. And by practicing it over and over again, and with my clients and my workshop participants, we practice worst case scenarios. So sometimes I'm shouting at people because it's much better to have me doing it than it is to not have ever experienced it. Or, so there's three ways of intimidation, really. There's the shouting, the loud voice, there's aggression, and then there's intimacy, asking a question is invasive. So one way to just handle the aggressive is not to try to stop it, but this is an Aikido move where we allow the energy, we accept the energy, and we allow it, and we allow the person to think that we're going in their direction, but we're actually slightly directing them off of their point. So to that end, never repeat a negative. But if somebody asks you a harsh question, what you can say is, you can buy time by going like, oh my God, that's so fascinating. So a neutral tone can immediately just give you a chance to take a breath and ground yourself. And then you may want to support that statement with statistics or with a bigger view. And you might just acknowledge even that by saying, you can say, oh, that's so fascinating, or so many people want to know the answer to that. And then you give the answer that you want. So you're not blocking it. You're going like, oh yeah, God, that's great. Like, why did you, I think your research stinks and you don't have, viable, it's not viable and it hasn't been proven. And you go, oh, that's such an interesting topic. Well, we actually had, 7,000 people in this study that was double blind, or double blind. And so the results, are do work and according to what is considered a viable study.
Very good.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, Bill Gates, this was before the personal computer had become the thing that it is today. And he was on the Today Show and he was being interviewed. And the first couple questions were kind of lobs across the bow. And he'd say something like, well, our real vision here is that we want there to be a computer on every desk. At Microsoft, we believe that that's really the future, a computer on every desk. And then somewhere in the middle of the interview, another lob across the bow. Yeah, I'm really glad you asked me that. And our true vision here at Microsoft is that we will have a computer on every desk.
Yeah.
And then as we got further into the thing, it was some really tough question that was like taking him down some other path. He says, that's a really interesting topic. I'm really glad you asked. I'm not prepared to talk about that today, but what I am prepared to say is that our vision at Microsoft.
That's a great transition. And you can say, I don't know about that. And what I do know is, so even if you don't say a but, it's even less of a thing. A but is a little bit of a stop, and you can say that. So you can say, I don't know anything about that. And what I do know is, and then you just move right into you're not a politician, so most people are not going to keep at you. But if you are on a super controversial topic, you better well have all of your facts and your opinions down cold and be able to say them in any circumstance with any personality and any situation. But that is a lifesaver. I don't know about that. And what I do know is that's a beautiful
I love that transition. So that brings me to another thing that I want to ask you about. I have been told that I'm really great with a sassy soundbite and that I turn a phrase really well and that it's good theater for the mind. And it's really especially useful during podcast guesting because podcast guesting is all about listening. And if you can be a gift to someone's listening ear, that's a great thing. But I've also heard that a lot of people get intimidated at the prospect of having to be clever or humorous or alliterative or any of that. These tends to be things that I love to do that come very naturally to me. But a soundbite does not have to be clever or poetic or rhythmic or alliterative to be effective. Isn't that true?
No, that's really true. And don't
get nail that comment. Like get people off the fence and say, I'm not clever and I'm not perky and I'm not this. But what do you have? Can you be clear? Can you be, talk about that?
Yeah. The clever quip is not going to bring you in business. It might be.
I'll say that again. That was really good.
It's not going to bring you in business. What is your point of doing publicity? What is your point of being out here? Is it to grow your business in the direction you want, to make connections, to make partnerships, to create great things in the world? A clever quip is not going to do that for you. It might be memorable. You might be able to repeat it. It might be really entertaining for the moment. And it's nice to have those to weave in, but that's not what does it.
What does it then?
What does it is your solid stories that people connect to and moving people with an emotion that they and being able to be relating to you and saying and being able for you to be able to say things like, I need this now. And she's the one for me. He's the one for me. They are the one for me. Their product, service, cause is right for me, and to create visceral, connective things that you can see, feel, hear, touch that people will remember. That's beyond the one sentence kind of thing. It's like this is a phrase that Maya Angelou said, right? People don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And that's it. And how do those little clever quips make you feel? If you laugh, that's great because that's an opening, right? Like that's a beautiful opening. And I think if you have one, say it. Like one of my clients said, astrology is a guide, not a god. That's a great line, but it's also really important. It was really important in her work because she didn't want people to use astrology as a god. So if you can sum up your life work in a sentence, yes.
I love that. I'm going to take that to heart myself. I tend to go quickly to the clever clip because it's just something that I
Well,
do.
you're so good at.
And
Yeah.
it's fun for me. I mean, I actually worked with a coach a number of years ago, and he was saying to me, I think you should dial back the way you talk because I think it might be intimidating for people or it might not be doing you any favors. And I'm a grown up now, and I don't take every piece of advice that a coach gives me. But I said to him after some reflection, I said, yeah, but if I dumb all that down and then they end up working with me and all these clever quips come out of me like music, well, they're going to wonder which one is it that, who's the real thing. Like,
Yeah.
I would just rather be myself in my full expression and have that be a magnet for the right people to be attracted to me than to try to wash it out of my hair and admit that it doesn't exist, because there really is no washing that out of my hair.
No, and you're super great at it. And I want to send people to you for that because that is not my gift. And the gift is, I mean, I believe that people have it all inside of them. So the gift is to actually draw it out of the people themselves. So they say it in the way that feels natural and good to them. The brilliance of working with you is that you can say some things that people don't know how to articulate, and you have the ability to articulate it very succinctly in ways that people remember. And that is a really great gift. And no, not to dial it back. And the only caveat I would say is and I think this has to do more with the feeling than the actual quip. Is it putting people off, or is it connecting? Is it in the vein of not a separation like I'm cleverer than you, but is it in service to people so they can either remember something better, or that you're shaping their gifts in a way that's helpful to them? So I think the intention behind the quip is important for the quip. And then people will take it in the spirit that it's given. Oh, she's not doing that to be better than me.
I think what you're saying about intention is really where it all has to start when we're doing any kind of communicating at all, which is, what is my intention in showing up on this interview? What is my intention in showing up on this podcast? What is my intention in speaking up on that stage? If we can connect to our boldest intention in service to people, then our intentions are close to our heart, which means that everything we get to, as you say, everything we do, say, are, and think is congruent with the message that we are delivering, in which case there will be a connection. And when there is an opportunity to take a step forward closer in a direction of yours, people will only be too glad to do it, which is a perfect segue for me to say, your course that I'm going to say correctly, the Zen of Fame.
Yeah.
Your genius zone gone viral.
Your genius gone viral.
Your genius gone viral. See, that's the way this is.
Honey, I hired a copywriter for that. So someone came up with that. Both of those two phrases that I have trademarked. The Zen of Fame.
Well, tell us what this is all about. Tell us what it's all about and why it's something we need to take a step closer in your direction to learn more about and to participate.
Yeah, thank you for that. Here, first of all, it's based on my book, Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul. And the reason why I wrote that book is for anybody who felt like they were bragging, begging, or whoring to get good publicity, or thinking that they have to be more like someone else or do something like someone else, or something that they weren't, instead of really diving and delving into who you are and giving that expression, what you called the full expression, out in the world. And that's why I wrote that book in, I think, 2002. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was before the conscious entrepreneur movement, so to speak. And by the way, in HarperCollins asked me to write the copy for their catalog, and I wrote Susan Harrow is a leader of the socially conscious movement, of which did not exist, right? At that time. Yeah, because the socially conscious entrepreneur didn't exist. And they printed it. And then Publishers Weekly printed that. So be careful what you say about yourself too. But that was the beginning of being a leader in the socially conscious entrepreneurial movement, meaning I work with people who really are doing something that not everyone, because but people who are wanting to make a real difference. Now it's sort of common language, but it wasn't then. Making a difference to millions, or whatever that is for you. Making a difference to someone, but like really having that effect. So the course really delves into those three parts, which is your messaging. What are you going to say to grow your business in the direction you want, to really grow those partnerships, those kinships, the audience, the sales, all of that in. And then number two is that how do you set up your systems to make that happen? And then number three is how do you set up a campaign that fits your style, suits your style and your temperament, that feels really good to you, that you know that you can do to get your message out into the world. And really the outcomes that have happened is like one person who took the course, got booked on NBC 5 times and tripled her speaking fees from $5,000 to $15,000. Another woman got sponsorships for, radio shows and got a whole tour done for, I'm not sure if her book was self-published, but essentially got a whole media tour. This was obviously before the pandemic, paid for, and got out there to support their cause with her book. So all of these kinds of things can sort of open up a huge world for you, and it's all self-paced, and you go at your own pace. And then we also give you one thing that I do want to say is I do give you a 27-minute consult to get you started to create your blueprint. So you've got that 27 minutes with me, and also we're going to give you a list of 100 contacts. So if you want to do this yourself, you have some place to start. But there's so much more in that course. But really what we're looking for is, can you be calm and confident and deliver your message and get out there in the world to the venues that you want and have real results? And I'm a huge person, both internal growth, people who move from fear to confidence, as well as being able to sell more books, products, services, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So I will drop the link to this course in the show notes so that people can go directly there. When I went there today, wasn't there 2 tiers of membership where they could do the course, and then that if they went VIP, they actually get 2 consults with you?
Yes. So the VIP, if you want to go VIP, you get 2 57-minute consults with me in addition to the 27-minute consult to get you started. So a lot of people, when I did that, when I offered it the first time round, somebody had told me, I don't think it was you, people are not going to take your free consult. Don't worry, just give it away. And every single person took it, which is really great. I had the great experience of hearing what people needed, but I was a very, very busy gal.
Well, it's a wonderful, I love that you built on your thought leadership with the sell yourself without selling your soul epic work to create this new course that gives people something that a lot of people are asking for these days, which is many courses, they go to our hard drives and never see the light of day, but yours gets brought alive when they go VIP with these private sessions with you, so that they have the opportunity to sit at the feet of the soundbite siren herself.
You gave me that idea.
Well,
by the way, the VIP, I hadn't, and my original one, I hadn't offered that. You goes, and I love doing those one-on-one consults, and you do too. And I thought, oh yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, see, that's the cool thing about us. I discovered that in my own course. I teach something called the Broadcast Your Brilliance Bootcamp. And when I was just the first 3 or 4 times that I taught it, what I was noticing is that I was hungry to have more connection with the people who were participating, so I could know what was going on behind the scenes and what was coming up for them and how we could elevate their experience. And I just sort of test drove, what if you could have this too? Would that be of value? And people were like all over it. It's like, isn't it great when the client gets what they want and you get more of what you want? So then everybody gets to do, say, think, and
say, are, think.
Right. In total congruence, and so I'm so glad you're doing that. So it's, say the name of the course again without any of this.
Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral. And the other thing that I want to say is I haven't been doing group coaching for a while, but if people want it and you ask for it, there's group coaching MP3s in there from the past that I've done, but I'm not doing it this session, but if enough people say, I really want this group coaching, then I'll do it, in addition to well, we just have to figure out what that would look like. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's so good to have your ear to the ground to know what people are asking for, because those of us who want to live our own genius are only here to respond to opportunities that are being voiced by our own communities. And I think that you and I are great examples of that. So there's one other thing that I wanted to ask you about before we close. And I saw this on your website somewhere, but imposter disease is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
People sell themselves short and sell themselves long. Do you have any, not necessarily clever quips, but important wisdom around helping people take that crown of imposter disease and to set it aside so they can step up and be confident and clear and concise and credible and courageous in delivering their messages, whatever they may be?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me about that, because I've been really thinking about this, and I'm actually creating a course on it, a quiz and a course, because it seems to be up for so many people. And I thought, gosh, this is so important, this imposter syndrome, and it stems from, the one is the comparing. So number one, so we've already talked a little bit of a strategy of doing that, so you don't just drop into despair, right? But the other thing is, and perfectionism is part of that too. There's like all of these different tenets. But I think one of the other things that's like super important about this imposter syndrome is not looking outside of yourself for acceptance. Because part of imposter syndrome is like, what are people thinking about me? And I know that this is a big thing, and it's not something that happens overnight, but it's continually saying to yourself, that question, what do I, and really saying, I think that we need to stack up the evidence of the kind of impact that we're making and really look at it and take it in. Because I know as women, we brush off the compliment, we like, blah, blah, blah. And this is a practice, to start taking it in. What have I accomplished? Like, what are my skills? Like, to do a real skill assessment. So then when somebody says, I actually heard a woman just say, I loved this. She's like, she gave a broadcast. She has millions of views on YouTube. And she said something, and lots of people attacked her. And you know what she did? Nothing. She gave them no energy, because that is the most powerful thing, to not give the negative trolls or whoever is. She thought, I don't even need to have this conversation. They misunderstood what I said. That's not my business. And that is so hard for all of us, myself included. But I thought, hey, I am going to take that in, because not only if I don't need to respond to that negative conversation. I actually don't need to give it any energy, and that's the fastest way to let that drop. But to start to recognize all of those kind of conversations as we come at us, in the internal conversation in our head too, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not this and that. Well, is that really true? I mean, ask the Byron Katie question. Is that really true? How do I know?
Oh, I have to say something about this.
Yeah.
I love Byron Katie's work, but when you ask yourself the question, is this true?
Yeah.
And you can undeniably say, no, it is not. It is such a powerful thing. And I had a situation a few weeks ago where someone lobbed an insult my way that really upset me to my core. It was so untrue that I was derailed that anyone would even hold such an opinion about me. And I was thinking about this. Is this true? Is this true? And it absolutely wasn't. And so the person said, you were forbidden from using these words in any of your marketing. And I said, well, why would that be? I've owned the URL for that since 2011. Like, I own that. I'm allowed to, I could feel myself getting all defensive.
Yeah.
So instead of getting defensive, like, it wasn't true. So I found a receipt from this domain registration site with the date of the purchase that I had purchased these words that I was going to own going forward. And I simply responded with, here's proof of performance of the date at which I claimed these words as my own. And that's all I said. And that ended the conversation. But when you are being backed into a corner where somebody is saying you are whatever, which was completely untrue, I thought it's not true. And I have proof. And there's no words I need to put behind it beyond the proof that I have. And I'm moving on. But the is it true? Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you, Byron Katie.
Yeah, is it true? And so you can, you could respond two ways. Not by not even delivering the proof, because you don't need to. Why do you have to prove it to her? Do you know what I'm saying? Like so we could respond, what you did was right for you. You had the proof, and it was important to you to show that proof, and maybe to stop the harassment, too. Like, so there's not one right answer in that way. Like, what is true for me? What was true for you is you wanted to stop the harassment. You wanted to stop that energy. And that's the way you did it. And that's what was right for you. So that's always the question. What is right for me? Some people might choose to respond and get into a conversation around that. That's their choice too.
Well, and in these hostile situations, I always go back to, and I don't know who said it first, but it was how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
And when there's a conflict and there's something at stake that matters to both parties, my husband always says, assume good intentions, practice blameless problem solving, and do the right thing, regardless.
That's really great advice.
And so it's like, well,
send me those three things.
They'll be here in minute 42 or whatever, 55. But yeah, assume good intentions, practice blameless problem solving, and do the right thing. And if how you do that is how you do everything, then over the course of a lifetime, people will have a consistent experience of you. And as you say, what you do, say, are, and think will be congruent, and people will have that bridge of trust built that has been established over years of time, where they have no doubt that doing business with you would be in their best interest. I think we all have to take responsibility for that. And that is the words that we speak on camera, the way we show up physically, the way the intention we bring to our words, whether we have a clever quip or a concise, clear message, as long as the intentions are clean, we should be in good shape. And so I know there's like so much more we could say about messaging and soundbiting for credibility, authority, and profitability, but I'm so pleased that I got to introduce my tribe to the amazing Susan Harrow today, the woman who I discovered along my journey, who was like a beacon of light to help shine the light that I could become an expert in my own right. And here we are, colleagues, peers, and friends, all these many years later. I'm so grateful to know you and have you in my world. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Any parting thoughts before we wrap this up?
I love ending on this intentionality, because I think it's so, but I want to say one thing about that, because I've been thinking a lot about this too. Like, I do a practice called Be a Wish Fulfilling Jewel. And it's just imagining a beautiful, I imagine like it's a Buddhist practice, but it's, my heart, reaching out to others and being a beacon of joy. And that's a practice that I have. And for really almost a year, I haven't been able to do it with a really good feeling. I still do it and I practice it, but I couldn't muster, like I usually can feel like I have a really good feeling, with you, and we're exchanging that, and I can really feel it, here to here. And I thought, God, should I keep doing this? Like, is it doing anything? Is it helping anyone? Is it helping me? Because it doesn't even feel good and I can't get the feeling. And I just kept doing it for a year with no feeling. And I just thought, well, I am going to just continue this practice, because you never know. And it's not that I'm looking for the quote unquote result, but it's in the practice, because we don't know when the seed is going to sprout. And there's a saying that, don't dig up your seeds. Like, you plant them, but you have to let them sprout. And the bamboo, by the way, can stay underground and not sprout. And then in 4 years, in that 1 year, it can shoot up to be 60 feet. And so just like 2 weeks ago, something shifted. and I can now feel myself being a wish fulfilling jewel again.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I don't know what, I can't tell you what it was. It's not like a one thing, but I can tell you that a shift happened. So for everyone, like if you think like I'm pedaling as fast as I can and nothing's happening, that is when it's continuing to do that deep intention, even if it's not yet fully embodied, to keep working to make it fully embodied, and just to keep practicing and making those little tiny shifts, because it's not the 10,000 hours, it's or the 10,000 things that you do, it's 10,000 things making an incremental shift each time that's going to move you forward. It's not doing exactly the same thing. And I tried all different things, like different times of doing the wish fulfilling jewel, different positions in bed. I mean, I just try, like, I'm like, well, maybe it's the position, you know what I mean? But I was just like, well, let me see if I can tweak this a different way. And then it's like, well, whatever. But you don't know. So sometimes you're going to be the bamboo.
Well, and you have to believe and behave as if it's going to happen in your whole heart and being. And one of the things that I say,
even without evidence,
right, I say to myself and advise my clients as well, my work is worthy of a much wider audience, and my business is worthy of sales beyond expectations, and I'm ready for opportunity even before it knocks. I say these three things to myself every single day. I've said them to myself all year long and for years leading up to it. And is it so amazing that I gave a talk for 12 Toastmasters last week. Someone asked to listen to the replay, loved it so much that they've invited me to speak to 1,500 people at the top of the new year.
Oh my God!
It's like, if you believe and behave as if it will, whatever it is it's going to be for you, if you are going to be a wish fulfilling jewel and you're going to believe in that and embody that, you will bring it about. What you think about, you bring about. So your work is worthy of a much wider audience. Your business is worthy of sales beyond expectations. You will get ready for opportunity before it knocks. And that means naming and claiming your message, your method, your sound bites, and practicing them everywhere you go. Even
and
in
I
front
love
of the
that you
bathroom.
said, there are 12 people, because some people go, there was just 12 people on there. And you didn't go like, there's just 12 little people. No, you gave your
I gave it everything that I had as if the most important people were in that room. And what do you know? The most important people were in that room. And that would be one other little tip is, don't forget to ask when you're giving a pro bono talk if you may have access to the replay to repurpose as you may see fit, because that is exactly what I did. And now these wonderful doors are opening. So we're all bamboo in the making if we can just affirm that these are the things that we believe. We will be a wish fulfilling jewel. We will be all these things. But if we need to get our sound bites down and we need to make the most of our moments at the microphone with powerful messaging that transcends and is remembered, Susan Harrow is an outstanding resource. And the name of your course one more time is?
The Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral.
Put the link in the chat. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I can't wait to see what people are saying. I'll be sharing this out in all the ways that I can, because together our work deserves a much wider audience, and the rising tide lifts all the boats. So thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this, go ahead and post a comment in the chat. If you have a topic you want me to cover for a future Learn More, Earn More, please let me hear from you, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a single episode of the Learn More, Earn More show with yours truly, Nancy Juetten, the Get Known, Get Paid mentor. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.